As homeschoolers, preparing to apply to college is a little different. It's gotten a lot better over the years, but there's still a few key aspects we need to watch out for. When you homeschool independently, the parent is the high school counselor and will need to prepare and send transcripts and school reports to the various colleges. You really have two roles with regards to admissions. You're the high school counselor and you're the parent. And these roles are very different. If, however, you're homeschooling under an umbrella school, keep watching. The tips I'll be sharing will help you too. Back in 2004, when my kids were little, we had park day gatherings each week. The other homeschool moms who had older kids asked me to help them with college admissions process, since I'd gone to undergrad and grad school. At that time, Celtic College Consultants was born. Hi, I'm Katherine O'Brien, and with my degrees in engineering and theology, I've been able to help students across the academic spectrum. I've helped my clients save tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars on college. Pictured are the covers of 3 books I've written so far. All are available on Amazon.com. The Ultimate Guide to Top Quality College Planning is a short book that I wrote to help parents understand the different kinds of training, the different services that college consultants offer, the different titles that we use. There's a whole spectrum of names that we call ourselves, as well as a little bit about the fee range and what people offer for those fees. And then the 2 college guides are for Catholic families looking for Catholic community and fellowship and discipleship on campus. There's some very excellent Catholic schools, and then where else? So there's about 300 schools in them. The 2019 edition also includes an index by major. So that should be very helpful to anyone who's looking for Catholic fellowship on campus. All of those are available on Amazon. So given the time of year, I want to address the PSAT right away because you need to go talk to the schools now. As soon as those school counselors are back on campus, before even the students come back in, it's a good idea to contact them. So the PSAT is a test that has several versions at this point. It's given by the College Board, and the October of junior year sitting also is the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. So all the National Merit Scholars that you hear about did really well on this test when they were juniors. If you want to take the test, then you need to contact the testing coordinator at your local high school and make arrangements for your student to be allowed onto their campus. It's only offered at brick and mortar schools, and it's offered on a particular day, usually the second Wednesday of every October. And so you'll need to make arrangements. If your local public high school will not allow non-registered students onto their campus, they're not required to, then you're going to need to go find a private school that will allow you to come onto campus. Do your best to develop a good rapport with that testing coordinator because there will be other occasions which you will need her help. And then don't forget to look up the homeschool school code for your state or for your umbrella school. The student's going to need that code when he or she takes the test. And if they've never done any of these kinds of tests before, it's really important. It has come to my attention that on occasion, homeschoolers will show up to these tests and they don't really even know their address or their phone number, which is kind of wild, but you know, they're just always there and they don't write it down on all the zillions of forms that the other school kids do. So they need to know their, you know, their address, their phone number, their school code, what grade they're in. Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes we don't tell them for various reasons, but they need to know for this test, they'll need to be writing that down. Obviously their birth date, they're going to know. Okay. So let's talk about what you're expected to teach during high school in a college prep curriculum. There's your basic, you know, 4 English and 3 math and that kind of thing that I went over in the homeschooling video in the freshman year sequence. But I wanted to, in the junior year, remind you that you need to really look at the colleges you are considering, because for different majors and different colleges inside the universities, they may have different requirements. A lot of times, for example, engineering schools are going to want 4 years of math. a lot of them, the top tier ones, are going to want you to have Calculus 1 finished before you get there. So you need to know what their requirements are. Another one that is a little unexpected sometimes is University of California schools expect a year of the visual and performing arts. So if you want that schools to be on your list, you need to be aware of what those requirements are and make sure that you have what's needed. It is not at all uncommon for colleges to ask homeschooled applicants to submit extra test scores to validate their coursework and help the admissions people to be able to recognize the academic abilities of the students more fully. There are several ways to do that. I'm going to go over 4 different ways to do that. And I want to bring up the SAT subject tests are the ones that they will most commonly ask for. However, these don't ever translate into college credit. So it's worth your while to ask if they will take one of the alternatives. So the SAT subject tests are, again, given by the College Board, just like the PSAT. And there are 20 of them in 5 general subject areas: English, history, languages, math, and science. The specific topics are listed on the screen. Each subject test is an hour long. They're all multiple choice, and the scores range from 200 to 800. The College Board website has a page for each test, and that lists the specific topics that are included on the various tests. They also have books of practice subject tests available. I highly recommend you be familiar with the test and how they ask the questions before you take it. The SAT subject tests are taken at the same dates and sites as the SAT. With the exception of March, when only the SAT is offered, they don't offer any subject tests anywhere. And so please note that it's not possible to take the SAT and the subject tests on the same day. You can, however, take up to 3 SAT subject tests on the same day, and you need to go to the College Board website to register to take the SAT subject tests. And be aware that they are not all offered every sitting. So, for example, if you want to take Hebrew, you need to take that in the June sitting. You know, French with listening, that's offered in November. So there are some that are only offered certain times of the year. So you'll want to be very careful to know that so that you can sign up for that. There are others, you know, U.S. history, etc., that are offered every time. But you want to make sure you look for your particular subject. The College Board also is the certifier of AP courses and the proctor or the giver of the AP test. And these tests, like the PSAT, are only offered on high school campuses in May. There's a fixed schedule followed around the world for the AP exams to be given morning and afternoon, which tests are which days. So you'll need to check with that testing coordinator at your local school and in a couple regards, because not every school offers every AP test. And so you'll need to make sure that they will let you onto campus and make the arrangements and all of that to take the test and that they're offering the test that you're looking for. You'll want to contact your testing coordinator in December or January to make arrangements to take the test in May. The cutoff is, I believe, the end of February for them to order the tests. So they typically are organizing things sooner than that. And that way, if there's any extra paperwork or anything they need you to do, you've got time to take care of all of that. And for all of these tests of all the kinds, they are all running about $75 each. So when you make arrangements, either like the SAT subject test, you're signing up through the College Board, or here where you're going to sign up through a school, you'll be dealing with testing fees at that time. The CLEP exam are college equivalency tests. These are also offered by the College Board. They're another way to provide scores to corroborate your academic work. Like the AP scores, there are many colleges and universities across the country that will give credit for them, for college credit. In this case, there are 2,900 schools that will give college credit for certain scores on the tests. And as you see, all the subjects, there are 33 subjects that offer the CLEP exam. They can be taken anytime throughout the year, and you make your arrangements through a local testing center. And through that CLEP page on the College Board website, you can find a center in your area. Typically, it's college or university where they do these testings. And the other big difference between this and the AP and SAT subject tests is that these are not Common Core correlated. So you may have heard of the Common Core curriculum. That's a K-12 curriculum that has been adopted in American public schools. But CLEP exams, being college equivalencies, are equivalent to college courses. So it's a little bit different as far as what's covered and how it's handled. And then lastly, to validate coursework, some schools will accept DSST test scores. So this is a set of exams that came from the Dante exams, if you're familiar with that, originally created to help military personnel capture and translate what they'd learned in their service time out to college credits. So this is another way to validate your coursework, and especially because they have tests in business and math and science, social science, technology, and the humanities that are simply not offered. Things like principles of supervision, or public speaking, or money and banking. Civil War and Reconstruction is a very focused American history topic. They simply don't have those offered in the other kinds of tests. For these, each test taker is given 2 hours to take each 100-question exam. These are also given at authorized testing centers, which are mostly found on college campuses. And the website for the information for the DSST exams is getcollegecredit.com. And you will make arrangements then with the testing centers, but you can get all the information of the colleges that accept them and then the testing centers. And these are available like the CLEP tests anytime, all year round, which can be quite handy depending on what's going on with your curriculum and the rest of your schedule. So those are the 4 ways to validate your academics using test scores. Now, you've probably heard of the SAT and the ACT. There's also the CLT we'll be talking about. These tests are taken by students that plan to apply to college, and the students have their scores sent to the college as part of the application process. Typically, they're taken during the junior year. That's why I'm bringing them up right now. So they have different sections. So the ACT has 5 sections: the English, math, reading, science, and an optional essay. The scores range from 1 to 36, and the national average is 21, composite or overall, with a national average of 20 in English, 20.7 in math, 21.4 in reading, and 21 in science. And the math section, you'll notice it's 60 minutes for 60 questions. And then the science section is the science reasoning section, not a science knowledge section. So you definitely want to prepare for this exam. It's going to be different than anything else you've ever seen. So you definitely want to review it and understand what they're looking for, because you're going to go gathering data and manipulating the data to answer the questions, not necessarily comprehending all of the science that they're going to present. And then there's the SAT. This has 3 major sections: the evidence-based reading and writing, math, and the optional essay. And on their website, they do give information broken out on the reading section versus the writing focus on the section, but they are tested, the scores come together for that. And then math, you'll notice you get 80 minutes and 58 questions, and it was 60 minutes and 60 questions for the ACT. So the ACT is definitely a little bit faster paced and a little bit more intense on the math. And then the SAT, again, has an optional essay, and the time is a little bit longer. The scores range from a 400 to a 1600, with 800 being the maximum possible on the reading and writing section and 800 on the math section, and you just add them up. The national average for English is 500, and the national average for math is 530. And I know the numbers don't add up, but those are what the national averages are. To schedule your taking of the SAT or ACT, you need to go to their websites, either the actstudent.org or College Board, and sign up, and then you can take it wherever you'd like on the national testing dates. And then the CLT is the Classic Learning Test. It was developed in 2015, and the goal was to make a better test to engage, assess, and admit the best students. It's a computer-based test, and it invites students to wrestle with the works of the greatest minds in history across literary and mathematical content. So it's kind of a great books, classics focus. They do use theistic and secular perspectives. And it's just a different approach. It's much more of a liberal arts kind of approach. Students receive the results the same day they take the test, and they can share the scores with as many colleges as they choose. At this point, there are over 100 colleges accepting their scores, which means that for those schools, they don't have to take the ACT or SAT. Students can just take the CLT and submit that score. Or they could do the ACT or they could do the SAT. I think there's 1 or 2 colleges that are only taking the CLT. There are about 250 testing centers across the country, and full information on this test can be found at cltexam.com. Scores range from 1 to 120. The national average is about 68. It too has an optional essay. And then lastly, for those who prefer to avoid testing altogether, go to fairtest.org and explore the more than 1,000 test optional colleges. This number keeps growing. It's over a third of the four-year colleges at this point have test optional admissions policy, which means that they'll take your test. Most of them will take your test scores if you want to offer them, or you can apply without them. There are a few that are refusing to take any test scores. They just won't accept them at all. But most of them will take them or not, and most students will submit them. But you can get accepted to those schools without test scores. The downside and thing that I want to make sure that you are aware of is that although the admissions department might be test optional, so you apply and you get accepted, a lot of the scholarships were set up by alumni or other benefactors, and they have a testing requirement. So you have to have a certain score in order to get the scholarship. So please be aware of that issue, and you want to explore that at schools that you're seriously considering if you are a test optional person. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about dual enrollment. So dual enrollment is when a high school student takes college classes while they're in high school. So they're not a high school graduate, they're a high school sophomore, junior, senior, and they're taking college classes. Okay, often the tuition's waived for high school students who are doing this. And some high school homeschoolers take advantage of the situation, and they may earn their high school diploma and their Associates of Arts or Associates of Science degree on the same day. There's good and bad to that, but some people will do that. Developing a field of interest is one opportunity that you have, and taking advanced classes in an area you really love, as well as taking classes that are difficult or impossible to do as a single student. You know, my kids who are involved in theater in a serious way or in music in a serious way, you can't do a play by yourself, not very many. And you can't do, obviously, an orchestra or a symphony or even a band with your family, no matter how large your family is. Some other people like to take advantage of doing lab science classes on campus. And a lot of colleges will offer algebra-based physics. So you could even do physics at the college as opposed to calculus-based physics, which is college-level physics. For admissions, a high school student with college credit is going to apply as a first-year student. Almost always. There are a few colleges that have, you know, if you have so many credits, then they insist you apply as transfer. But you'll want to watch. Most of them, you apply as a first-year student because you're a high school student who's just graduating. You haven't been off to college, even though you've got college credit. Just like the kids who did AP classes and did well on the tests may have college credit they're going to get. So do not apply as a transfer. I would, however, caution you if you are planning to get an associate's degree as you get your high school diploma. For some schools, then they will insist that you apply as a transfer student. The downside of applying to a transfer student is that there's far fewer seats available, so the competition's a little bit more fierce. And most of the scholarship dollars are for first-year students. So the way that you would do this is you would finish your high school and you'd have however many college credits you have, you know, whatever, it could be a lot. And you apply as a first-year student. You get accepted as a first-year student. Then they send your transcript over to another office, and they compute which credits are going to transfer and which are going to waive requirements, how they're going to handle all of that. And then you may come in as a first-year student with sophomore standing or junior standing or second semester freshman standing, that kind of thing. So the admissions office is one thing. The registrar's office that handles the registration of classes and all of the requirements and course credits and all of that kind of thing is another thing. So that's how that happens, but you want to make sure you apply as a first-year student and make sure that you submit all transcripts as part of an application. It is not at all uncommon to have your homeschool transcript of classes you took kind of at home or through Homeschool Connections or some other online provider or your co-op or however you took them. And then also have a transcript from one community college over here and another college over there. And so you've got several. And you can't just list those classes on your homeschool transcript. You certainly can list them, but you need to also have those official transcripts from those colleges and universities, sending those to the colleges that you're applying to get your bachelor's degree. So make sure you send all of the transcripts as part of your application. That sometimes gets overlooked because people think, oh, I included it on our transcript and showing that all that, but it's not an official transcript from the school. So they need that since they are an accredited university, they need their transcript. And the colleges will usually kick back and say, hey, we need this other transcript as well, but not always. So we want to make sure that you are aware of that. Okay, and I want to take a minute to talk about admissions and how they look at academics in general. And academics, of course, is the most important part of your application. And they're going to look for you student to take challenging classes. And so at a regular school, the way that they would look at this is they would get also, in addition to the transcript, they get a school report. And that school report's going to show, you know, the average income in the community and how many parents are college educated and what classes were available. And so if there were no AP classes available at that high school, it shows that. If there are 8, it shows that. If there's 25, it shows that. So that they can see that, oh, you know, you took honors classes in English all 4 years, but how come you never took AP language or AP literature? And they go, oh, well, you know what? Their school didn't offer it. Or they only offered it to juniors, but they didn't start the program till their senior year. So the student couldn't take it. And they recognize that you challenged yourself as much as you could in what was available to you. Now, as homeschoolers, the admissions people that have heard me speak know that you can take AP classes through the Pennsylvania Homeschoolers online. And they're aware of doing CLEP tests and other things because, you know, remember, admissions sees these year after year. They see our applications coming in and they know what we can do. And so while they do look at us all individually, they look at us collectively as well. And so they're aware that you could do more maybe than you are. So the rule of thumb always is to do the best you can, take the most challenging courses you can, and stretch yourself, not just playing it safe. Don't play it safe. And don't be super risky either. If I'm kind of good at this and, you know, I don't know that I should be in an AP class, maybe I should be in the honors class, and that's okay. If that's the best I can do and that's playing full out, then that's what I should do, whatever that is. And then excellent grades. And they're going to look for, of course, A's, but they also want to look at trends. Sometimes students don't do very well when they begin high school and then they do better. Sometimes an event happens, a move or a death in the family or something happens, and the student's grades will drop. And then they come back, or they don't. Or a student's grades are uneven, and this student's just always been really, really strong in English and languages, and they're just not so great at math, or vice versa. And so they're going to look at all those kinds of trends as well. And maybe the student, you know, wasn't so good, and they maybe got some extra tutoring, spent some time over the summer, or whatever, and then their grades did much better in that field. So they're going to recognize that. They're going to hear about that probably in your essays as well, but they're going to look for those trends. So the parents don't always realize all the things that admissions is looking at. Of course, great test scores. And one of the things we don't ever want admissions to have is questions. So we've got fabulous test scores and not so great grades. So day in and day out, you don't really do the work. You just show up and you're fabulous. Do you have the work ethic that you need to be successful on our campus? That's going to be a question that they're going to have. Vice versa. if you've got great grades and horrible test scores, it could be that you're a poor test taker, or it could be that your grades are inflated. And there are a lot of schools that are inflating grades, so a lot of colleges are going to probably think that mom and dad are just being nice and giving out great grades to a mediocre student. So we don't want them to have any questions. We want to have clarity. And if that means you need to write an extra essay or note or something so that they understand what's going on and they've got context, that's what you need to do. And then again, specific requirements. As I mentioned before, the UC schools with their requirement to take a visual performing arts class, or you might need to take an extra English class or an extra history class, depending on your major, or an extra math class is really common, or make sure you have a certain number of lab classes, et cetera, et cetera. So foreign languages is another one. Some require none, some require 2 years, some require 4 years. So you just need to see what they require so that you have that. So admissions is going to look at all of those different aspects of your academics. Okay. Record keeping is going to be super important for homeschoolers. So hopefully you've already been able to do some research and you know the requirements of schools you're seriously looking at. You want to keep a list going and have the student do this. This is a high school student. This isn't a grade schooler. And they can keep track of all the books they read for which class and what books they're reading for pleasure. Okay? And schools are getting smart. Sometimes there's an application I'm helping a young man with right now, and they have a word limit on how many, 500 words for his list of books. So if that was an average homeschooler, we'd be weeding out books off the list because typically we read more than the other kids do. Okay. Track all your course providers and texts used because you're going to need to indicate that to the schools. And if you're using co-op or online classes, make sure you know the academic credentials of the people who are teaching. A lot of times we're learning from people who have master's degrees, sometimes even doctorates, and we don't realize that. But when we indicate that, that helps the colleges understand the caliber of the academics that are probably going on in the classroom. And then they get it validated from test scores and the texts that are used and, you know, the kind of vocabulary the students presenting, et cetera. They'll get it. But you need to have that data as well. And then keep sample papers because you will find that some colleges, especially on the liberal arts end of the spectrum, the humanities end of the spectrum, want a graded sample paper as part of the college application. Others are going to ask you to write a paper or a serious academic essay as part of your application. Especially for the test optional schools, you can definitely expect more writing in their applications because they have to have some kind of academic criteria, right? So they're going to see what you can do and then have you manifest that in papers. So definitely keep some, especially junior year, and some great, really well done papers. And I would keep several of different lengths depending on what kinds of things the colleges that you're applying to are going to ask for. You also want to document the extras. When I talk with admissions personnel, I'm keen to remind them to ask more from us because we have more time. Some of that overhead time that kids in institutional schools have, we don't have. And so our kids have time to go forward in their interests and develop themselves more. So make sure that you're pursuing your academic interests, your intellectual interests, and you're documenting what you're doing. You want to develop your talents, pursue awards, create a portfolio if that's appropriate, or get published, give presentations. You want to do significant things in your community and offer significant leadership, get a job, start a business, do some things that build upon themselves. You know, I've had kids do summer camps where they, you know, were into art or something, and they would just gather all the littles in the homeschool group and they would do a class. And typically they would charge money for the class, which would cover materials and a little bit extra. So they actually made a little bit of money, which is great because now they've got a business and they've learned so many skills in doing that. Okay, so we need to be looking for and creating those kinds of opportunities because our schools don't offer any ready-made clubs to join. There's no going to lunch with this group of people on Wednesdays so that we could say we're part of the whichever club, right? We have to go make it happen. So we need to document what we're doing. Your curriculum I already mentioned, and your graduation requirements. Sometimes we forget that we need to set those and you know, we get to make those, but we need to make it clear in the transcript that this is what's expected for graduation and these requirements have been met. And document how you took initiative to develop your leadership skills. Even things that fail, you want to document things. How did you explore your special interests? Sometimes our kids are taking online courses that don't give a certificate of completion and they don't give college credit, but they're doing extensive study or research on their own. Are we documenting that? We need to be documenting all of that. If they're submitting articles and getting published in e-zines and other things, we need to let them write that down, encourage that to be part of this body of documentation that we're creating. If they're in a community choir or a church choir, they're doing athletics with a club as opposed to a school, or maybe they're able to participate with the local school on the athletics team, all of those kinds of things. Part of what they're looking for is the character and the leadership and the empowerment of the young person to go do things to change the world in whatever their field of strength is and whatever the gifts that they have. They're also looking to see how they're using their time. And also document things. For example, if you have a large family, like my oldest definitely could put this on his list. He's got 5 younger siblings, and during his high school years, in addition to becoming an Eagle Scout, being involved in various clubs, getting the grades that he got, he also helped enormously with the younger siblings, because the youngest has Asperger's and was a toddler and early grades while he was in high school. And so he did a lot of things to help out. So that whole area was something that we documented because it was a significant commitment of time, and it was a place that he demonstrated leadership and responsibility and took care of things. And it was not something that from anything else on his applications you would know. So he actually got leadership scholarships, and I think that was part of it. I think the Eagle Scout was a part of it, some other things that he did. But that piece is okay if that's legitimate. If that's not really a thing that's happening, don't fake it, please. Through all of this, the student is demonstrating their ability to organize themselves, others, and tasks. And those are abilities that they need to have to be successful on a college campus. The student often is learning to motivate themselves and others as well. And this is something that we have this opportunity that's in far larger proportion than our traditionally schooled peers. So take this opportunity and run with it. The last thing I want to say before we wrap up is to not be afraid, parents, to call admissions. A lot of times I've had parents come up to me and say, I just don't want them to think badly of me. I don't want them to think we're bad because we're homeschooling or this or that, or, it's okay to call. You're the high school counselor. You may have some questions. Do your homework, do your due diligence first and look things up online and what information you can find. But then if you have legitimate questions about how to document something or whatever it is with regards to admissions, call and ask for help. You do not need to identify the student's name, although at some schools that's fine. And you can kind of tell. Some schools are they just have a different feel, we'll put it that way, than other schools. Some are less competitive, some are more pro student growth, just in general for everybody. So you don't have to give the student's name. You need to give enough information so that they can understand your question and have clarity there. And let them know that you homeschool and here's your questions. If they have a homeschool admissions advisor, talk to that one. It's okay to have a little bit of a relationship get developed there. They know that you're serious about your job as the counselor and your job as the parent, and you're doing what you need to do, and you're making sure things get documented in ways that the college can understand. You're actually making their job easier. So don't be afraid to call. And transcripts you can ask. Some of the colleges have their own forms, and that's something I can help you with, or there are others. And one thing I wanted to mention about transcripts that I forgot to mention earlier. If you're even considering a military academy, you want to have scrupulously detailed notes because they want to know when you took all your classes. And a lot of times we have different course providers and schedules, and we're taking vacations at odd times of the year because we're taking advantage of the quiet while other people are in school, all that kind of thing. But they want to know, when does this class take? You started this class when and you finished it when for each class. Or you started it and then you took a break because your school was in recess for a month or whatever in October, So we need to have all that stuff documented, particularly for the military academies. They're going to want all of that sort of thing as well as everything else. So I am delighted that you took the time today and that we had an opportunity to talk. As you can tell, there's just a lot to do with getting all this prepared and pulled together. It would be my pleasure to meet with you and discuss how I could help you. To schedule an appointment, please go to CelticCollegeConsultants.fullslate.com. I have my calendar there, and you can go ahead and click my name and schedule a consultation. If you would like more information about me or my firm, CelticCollegeConsultants.com is my website, and I'd be happy to hear from you. Thank you ever so much, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.